and start our program. Please feel free to continue eating. The servers are actually going to back off a little bit here when our guest speaker starts. If you still have a plate in front of you, you can just push it forward and bring that delicious cake closer to you. And it's so good that you should keep an eye on yours to make sure the person next to you is not trying to get it. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I want to once again thank the class of 1981 and the class of 1958, because there's so much that goes on at the Academy that would not go on if it wasn't for the generosity of classes, individuals, and corporations. And Jamie and Valerie Navarro, who are from the class of 81, are they actually here? Okay, I just wanted to recognize you as well, because we don't want to leave anybody out from that great class of 1981. And Mrs. Lawrence and Mrs. Larson, again, thank you for being with us tonight. You have contributed so very much to this Academy community over the years, and I am personally grateful, and I know there are so many people that have been influenced that are here tonight and all over the world by you and your husbands. So thank you again for being here. So I'm now honored to introduce our guest speaker. I first worked with our guest speaker when we were served together as instructors at Marine Aviation Weapons and Tactics Squadron 1, which is the Marines' equivalent to the Navy's Top Gun school. But the male instructors at MAUTS 1 are much more handsome than Tom Cruise. But that's kind of what MAUTS 1 is about, though we look at integrating air, ground, and logistics, unlike the Top Gun school. When I first met Captain Beydler, which he was at the time, I saw someone who is a superb aviator, an extraordinary instructor, and really an outstanding tactician and strategist, even at an early stage of his career. And I knew personally that this officer was going to go far and make a significant contribution to our Marine Corps nation, which he absolutely has. General Beydler is a 1981 graduate of the Naval Academy and has commanded a fighter attack squadron, a Marine aircraft group, a Marine aircraft wing, and a joint organization, and currently is the commanding general of the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force. Additionally, General Beydler has served in critical and high visibility staff assignments with the United States European Command, the United States Joint Forces Command, and the United States Central Command. General Beydler has flown approximately 4,000 hours in tactical jet aircraft, with over 3,000 of those hours in the F/A-18. Before I bring General Beydler up, I do want to recognize his wife, Kim, as well, because someone who has done the types of assignments that General Beydler has done doesn't do that without great support from his wife, Kim, and I just want to give her a hand. So now join me in welcoming Major General Dave Smoke Beydler.
Well, good evening, everyone, and I thank you for that kind introduction. I would tell you that Kim and I could not be more pleased to be with you here this evening. We've had the opportunity over the past couple years to spend a little bit of time in Annapolis, and this is a place that we like to come. It's a place where we can come and look at the future of the Navy and Marine Corps and be very, very confident about what these organizations that we've invested our lives in and where they're going. I would tell you, for that matter, you can come to Annapolis and feel good about where our nation is going. So Kim and I could not be in a better place this evening. I'll tell you, I'm honored to be a part of the Vice Admiral William P. Lawrence Ethics Award Dinner. As a midshipman, I never thought I would come back for an evening like this or be in this position. But it's great to be with you here this evening. Mrs. Lawrence, I can't begin to tell you what an impact your husband and you have had on a legion of Marines and sailors in my class, the wonderful class of 1981, to our services, the Marine Corps and the Navy, and to the nation. As has been said earlier this evening, you have set a great example for all of us here, and I couldn't be more pleased to be at this dinner recognizing your husband and all the two that you've done for us. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'd also like to thank my classmate, Vice Admiral Carter, and Colonel Athens, sir, for putting this together and inviting me here to speak this evening. I'd also like to welcome all the distinguished guests we have here this evening and thank you for lending your support and weighing in on this most important topic, the topic of leadership. You know, I've been asked this evening to talk about ethical leadership while recognizing midshipmen writers and the work that they've done in NE 203, Ethics and Moral Reasoning for Naval Leaders. What I thought I would do this evening is I thought I would talk a little bit about the topic of ethical leadership from my position as a senior leader, and then I thought I would talk about a few examples where ethical leadership and ethical decisions came to the fore in my own career. I want to be clear on a few points right up front, and I would tell you, as a recipient of the product of this fine institution, those young officers, Navy and Marine, who represent this institution so well and perform so well in the operating forces, I see the U.S. Naval Academy first and foremost as a leadership school. The most important this school does, that this institution produces, is that of leaders. Young men and women who can get others to do things that they may not do of their own volition. That's what this school is all about. I would tell you that the Navy and Marine Corps can buy all of the things that are byproducts of this school. Things like engineers, things like managers, things that schools across this great country produce. But the thing that they cannot buy wholesale is leaders. That's what separates this institution from anything else. It's not about the bachelor's degree. I expect the bachelor's degree to come with a leader. That's what I expect at Camp Lejeune. That's what I expect in the Marine Forces. If I do not get a leader out of this institution has come up short. The bachelor's degree is just a byproduct of that whole process. And I would tell you, when it comes to the programs, the education that this school presents, you know, it's only good being smart and well educated if it leads you to being a better leader. That's what I'm after, again, in the operating forces. The second point I want to be clear on, the moral, mental, and physical. We've heard that a million times. I talk to young Marines and sailors about that all the time. The moral, the mental, and the physical. That this institution focuses on with its midshipmen, the moral is the driver. The moral is the driver. I can buy the mental and the physical. Again, I cannot buy the moral. I would tell you that moral and leadership, especially in the business that we're in or that the midshipmen are about to be in, are inseparable. I don't know how you can be a leader without it being moral leadership that you espouse. I would argue that any truly successful organization, institution, business for that matter, has to have some form of moral leadership, or over time it will come apart. Fact is, when I see young officers that can and sometimes do make mistakes, it is not the mental and it is not the physical that is their downfall. It's the moral. So for everyone here, something that we've all heard being a part of this fine institution, we prepare young midshipmen morally, mentally, and physically. It's the moral that's the driver. Now, I would tell you, my experience has been that this is all quite challenging. Ethical leadership is challenging. Leadership is hard work. I tell my commanders, if you're not working hard, you're probably not doing it right. That's been my experience. I would say that the ethical leadership requires hard work and constant vigilance. Some of our most accomplished leaders, the most accomplished leaders that this nation has produced have lost their way. You know the names. And it's the moral piece, it's the ethical piece that typically is the issue. Now, I'm very, very pleased that the Academy and the midshipmen here apply themselves to this topic. For the essay winners tonight, I applaud your efforts and I applaud your performance. That said, I want to make it very clear. It is far easier to write about ethical leadership than it is to do it. The calm and quiet, the black and white, the sterile environment of composition is far different than the rough and tumble, gray world that naval leaders live in. Now, I applaud you for what you've done, and you've had some time to think about this, but I would tell you that there's probably not going to be a whole lot of time to think about some of the ethical challenges that you're going to face. Again, leadership is hard work, and morally ethical leadership is hard work backed by constant vigilance. In the real world, these challenges, just kind of creep along. Fat Leonard did not show up with a warning label. Jill Kelly did not show up with red lights flashing. That's the way it works. These things kind of creep up on you. And those that are intent on deception, that's the way they operate. So as a leader, my experience has been that these challenges sometimes come up when you're amazed that you're even talking about a challenge. He did what? That guy did what? You're asking me to do what? I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in some of the examples that I'll share with you. I would tell you that I thought about a few of the things, and perhaps this is for the midshipmen here, some things that I thought about as I consider what I can do to maintain my own vigilance. I would tell you, the first one I would give you is look for ways to sacrifice just a little more. Think about that. If there is a question, vote and side against yourself. I tell my staff, I travel a lot, travel claims get a whole lot of people in trouble. I tell my staff, I want every nickel that the government owes me, but not 1 penny more. The point there is I will never round up. Okay? Look for ways to sacrifice just a little bit more and be willing to side against yourself. The second point I'd leave you with is look for ways to take a stand. If you want to set the standard, you have got to enforce the standard. Now, what is standards and how is that linked to ethical leadership? My sense is that folks that are unwilling to take a stand are typically those who don't meet the standard and are unwilling to put themselves out there upholding something that they themselves don't meet. I have found that taking a stand tends to cause one to think about the standard that they're taking the stand on. I've told my Marines and sailors, I'm not going to be the CG at II MEF that walks around the exchange looking for white socks. But I'm not going to walk past something I see that's not meeting the standard, and I'm going to damn sure make sure that I meet that same standard before I caution somebody about it themselves. The last thing I do, again, as a part of vigilance, is I look for ways to be even more transparent with my leadership. This is an important one, and I'll share an example of this a bit later. Reporting a shortcoming your boss would never find out outside your telling them builds unbelievable trust. When I was the Kayak Marlowe at Al Udeid several years ago, General Peck and General Buchanan heard about every off-target bomb that the Marine Corps dropped over there from me before they'd find out about it from anybody else. I was the first with the bad news. They had complete trust and confidence in me as their Marlowe. I tell people my boss will always see me for who I am and my command for who we are. Okay? Now, when I thought about this whole topic of ethical leadership, one of the things that I came back to, one of the things that I've marveled at for years, and I think I mentioned it to you, Art, and I would offer for your consideration, is the Rotary four-way test. How many of you have heard of the Rotary Club four-way test? Now, I would tell you, I'm not a Rotarian, and I'm not espousing any particular club view, but I've always been fascinated by this. It's a very simple approach. And the Rotary Club four-way test of things they think, say, or do goes like this. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? It does not get any more elegant than that. That's 25 words. 25 words that capture it about as well as I could imagine. All framed around the concept of service above self. You know, without going into the history on this, I'll just tell you, it was developed in the 1930s by a fellow named Herbert Taylor, who desperately needed to change the ethical environment in the company he owned, a company that was failing. His thought was, and listen to this, that if his people were to think right, they would do right. That's brilliant. Now, I would commend that to the Stockdale Leadership Center and perhaps get some papers written on the applicability of the Rotary four-way test to the Navy and Marine Corps. Perhaps you could say that in the Navy and Marine Corps we have a three-way test: honor, courage, and commitment. Core values that we share between the two services in the one department. Core values that, in my estimation, separate us from the folks walking around downtown. The way I would describe that, the honor, courage, and commitment, as a Marine, the way I would say that to the Marines that I run with in North Carolina is, what you are when no one is looking is what you are. That there is no right way to do the wrong thing, and that a Marine is not what you do, but who you are. Okay, so with all that said, I want to run through three brief stories with you where I encountered an ethical dilemma. And you can be the judge on how these were handled. The first happened to me as a major when I was the aircraft maintenance officer in an F-18 squadron on the USS America about 20 years ago. I had a staff sergeant working for me as the staff NCOIC, the staff non-commissioned officer in charge of our flight equipment shop, the PRs, the guys that take care of the flight equipment. And as an aviator, you get pretty close to the guys who take care of your flight equipment. I saw this guy every day, Staff Sergeant Van Bortle. He was one squared away Marine. He had just come to us from the drill field at Parris Island. He had a high and tight haircut. He was black and white in everything he did. To be quite honest with you, when he showed up to the squadron, he was perhaps a little bit too much of a drill sergeant, perhaps a little bit too much black and white. No nonsense. He was straight as an arrow. In that shop, we had a younger Marine, a Corporal Moran. I can picture him today. He was tall and lean and fit and just a picture-perfect Marine, non-commissioned officer. He was a poster. And I'd been asking Staff Sergeant Van Bortle for some time what we needed to do to get him promoted to sergeant. What do we got to do to get him promoted to sergeant? I mean, he's acting like a sergeant. I mean, he was everything. What can we do to get his performance marks and test scores up to meeting the cutting score for promotion to sergeant? Again, he was a fine performer. I'm asking a question. And over time, Staff Sergeant Van Bortle indicated that he was working it. We were deployed on a carrier. We'd been deployed for some time, and running Marine Corps physical fitness test, PFTs, which include a 3-mile run, was a little bit difficult for us to do. And one day the operations officer, a fellow major, approached me and indicated that he had some problems with the way some of the scores for PFTs were recorded in the squadron's PFT log. And after a lot of discussion and some debate, it did appear that scores for Corporal Moran had been altered in that log. So we went and approached Staff Sergeant Van Bortel, and he was adamant that Corporal Moran had nothing to do with altering those scores, adamant about that, but gave us no indication of anything beyond that. And finally, after a lot of discussion and a lot of frustration, he admitted to altering the scores himself. Man, I got to tell you, I was dumbfounded. I was floored. How could he have done this? How could he have thought that in what I thought were casual interactions, what can we do to get a quality corporal, a sergeant, that he thought what I was asking him to do was to compromise himself in altering scores to up his cutting score, his PFT score. Man, oh man, I was crushed. Did I contribute to this? How could he have thought that? How could he have thought I would have asked him to compromise himself for another Marine? And then how do I hold him accountable? We're in the middle of a combat deployment. It became a huge dilemma for the entire squadron. Many of the squadron, people in the squadron knew about it. You don't hide those things on a boat. You know, the staff sergeant had lied, and now how could I trust him with flight equipment that is critical to the safety of what we do away from the ship? Should he be fired, court-martialed, NJP'd? What do I need to do with him? And what was my contribution? Where had I gone wrong? Again, all tough issues. It took me some time to work through this. And at the bottom of it all, it was clear that he had altered the records with the intent to deceive. No mistaking. He had done so in an attempt to give Corporal Moran an updated PFT score that he had not run, but I would tell you, it was not an inflated score. He didn't make him any better than his score was before, but it was not current. And throughout this whole evolution, there was nothing that I saw that he did that bettered himself. It wasn't his score. It wasn't for his gain. It was for one of his Marines. Again, all things that you got to think through. Anything but black and white, I would tell you he was officially counseled and given a fitness report that called to attention his poor judgment. I'm not sure I handled that right. But I would tell you, it's an event that anybody associated with it will never forget. Before I came here, I called the major, who was the operations officer of the squadron. I said, let's go through this one more time. I want to make sure I've got it right before I speak. That's the way it happens. It doesn't come with a flashing red light. The second event I'll talk to you about happened about 2 weeks ago, and it happened between two Marine general officers. I was a speaker at a large gathering of Marines up at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and when we walked out of the building where we had assembled with my sergeant major in a sea of Marines wearing a uniform not unlike this one, I was struck to see a young Marine in a pickup truck flying 2 flags on stakes in the back of that truck. One flag was the American flag. The other flag was the Confederate battle flag. And I looked over at my sergeant major. I said, what are the rules, Sergeant Major? He didn't know. I didn't know. But I knew that flag had to come down. So, Sergeant Major, let's go. So we walked over the vehicle, surrounded by probably 300 Marines and sailors filtering out to the parking lot to their vehicle. And after a brief discussion between my sergeant major and the young Marine in the truck, both flags came down, without incident. And I was surprised. And I got in my car to drive back to my headquarters. And before I got back to my headquarters, I sent out an email to all the other general officers in the force there, telling them what I just witnessed and what I'd just done. And I commented that I was surprised that a vehicle with that kind of flag could be on the base that long before someone did something about it. Albeit, there is still no rule in DOD that prohibits that flag flying. So I sent that email out, and as soon as I got back to the office, I received a phone call from a fellow general officer, and he told me that he too had seen that Confederate battle flag, but had failed to act on it. I was not chastising. I was not looking to single anybody out in my email. I was just telling him what I was doing. He didn't have to tell me that he saw that flag and didn't do anything about it. He felt an obligation to say that. Now, that is an officer that I have supreme confidence in. I had supreme confidence in that officer before he made that phone call. He didn't have to acknowledge any of that. He felt compelled to. And I would tell you, my confidence is redoubled with that Marine. Not that I need it anymore. He didn't have to tell me a thing. I would have never known. The third was an incident that I wasn't directly associated with, but I would tell you, rocked our Marine Corps, and it happened out at Camp Pendleton in November of 2014. While not directly an ethical leadership issue, it gets after the ethics of decision making. A young Marine on a Friday evening at Camp Pendleton starts drinking in the barracks. He departs the barracks probably intoxicated beyond the level of safe driving and proceeds on that great big base out there to a fellow young enlisted Marine's quarters. And when he shows up there, they notice he's intoxicated and he drinks more. And after an altercation, in an attempt to prevent him from driving any further, he gets the keys to his vehicle, hops in his vehicle, and drives off, going back to the barracks, which is on the other side of that very large base. As he's driving through Camp Pendleton at an abnormally high rate of speed, the MPs see him and pursue him. As he gets back towards his camp, going at a very high speed, he impacts the duty vehicle driven by the regimental duty officer, a young lieutenant, and kills him there on the spot. It can't get any worse than that. That's a hard one to explain to anybody who asks a question. I would tell you that Lieutenant General Neller, our next commandant, has spent a lot of time with the family of that lieutenant. And there is nothing that he can say that would relieve their grief or put it in context. Now, what I thought I would share with you here is portions of the initial pre-investigation report, because I think it's insightful and relevant. And directly from that report, I'll read this to you. As the suspect's company commander suggests, the causative factors included a Marine whose decision-making process lacked maturity and a moral foundation. The result led to actions that were selfish and reckless and resulted in a catastrophic outcome. Suspect is representative of many young Marines found throughout the Marine Corps, tactically and physically sound but ethically underdeveloped. Commands must put high a premium on the ethical development of Marines as they already do on their tactical and physical development. This responsibility falls squarely on leadership within battalions. All bold here. Ethical development of Marines is the essential element in meeting our task of developing responsible warriors and quality citizens. That's what the initial report said. I can't add anything to that. I think that they got it about right. I think that our institution is pursuing that aggressively and will continue to pursue that under General Neller's leadership. My sense is that ethical leadership is at the center of the ethos of an institution. Certainly, that's the case in our institution, the Navy and the Marine Corps. It is about all of us, who we are and what we do. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to come back to this fine institution and share a little bit of what I'm seeing in the force. Thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you. Semper Fidelis.
So I'd like to present General Beydler with the Stockdale Center Moral Compass. There are all kinds of compasses that assist with the tactical realm, but this one is just a reminder of many of the things that he shared with us tonight. And I can tell you, having watching this gentleman over the years, he lives out what he just talked about, and there's a lot of Marines that are blessed because of that, and a lot in the Joint Force. So, sir, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So now is the time to recognize our award winners. Before we do that, I do want to thank all those who teach NE 203, the course where these essays come from, the course that helps develop that moral compass here at the Naval Academy, led by Rick Rubel, the course director. Rick, you're where? There's Rick right there. And if I could just have everybody who teaches NE 203 just to stand up so we could recognize you and thank you for what you do in the classroom. This event also allows me to introduce the newly appointed Distinguished Chair in Ethics who works in the Stockdale Center. Mr. Mitt Regan from Georgetown University Law Center, and he's accompanied by his wife, Nancy. And I think, Mitt, you're right over there. So let us welcome Mitt to the Naval Academy. So for the Ethics Essay Awards, there's 2 semesters. About half of the third class take the course in the fall and half take it in the spring, and they write a lot during that time. Some of them might actually disagree with General Beydler that the pressure in this weekly thing is just about like combat, but it really isn't. But they do a lot of writing, and the best papers from each semester are submitted to the staff within Leadership, Ethics, and Law, which is part of the Leadership Education and Development Division run by Captain Wes Huey. And then that group narrows it down to about 5 to 7 for each of the 2 semesters. And then we have a set of outside readers who actually read through the papers, rank them, give those back to us, and that's how we determine who are going to be the actual recipients of the awards. We have 3 readers every year. I'll introduce them. I believe 2 are with us this evening and 1 is not. The first outside reader, Mr. Paul Neary, is the Director of Ethics and Business Conduct for Boeing Defense, Space, and Security. Paul, good to have you with us. The second reader was Rear Admiral Jack Kirsch, a former submarine officer and an emeritus trustee of the Naval Academy Foundation. Admiral Kirsch, thank you very much. And the third reader, who I don't think was able to join us tonight, is Mr. Charles Kanuski, Program Manager of the Department of Defense Healthcare Management System Modernization Program for Leidos. And I don't think he is with us. But those are the 3 readers that allowed us to pick who we have as our winners. I'm going to actually introduce each of the people who were finalists. They will get a certificate. We'll have each one come up. They'll get a photograph with General Beydler and Admiral Carter. Gentlemen, if you would join me up here for our photos. And we will start with the fall. And I'm going to read the whole citation, and then after the first one, I'm just going to read the name and the title of the paper that was written. This is from the director of the Stockdale Center, a letter of commendation. I commend you for your outstanding contribution to the ethics essay competition with your paper entitled A Look at Israel's Iron Dome System. This was Midshipman Second Class Ross Gilchrist. Your paper was selected by a panel of distinguished experts as a finalist from a field of over 400 entries submitted by students in NE 203 during the fall 2014 semester. Your achievement is a testament to both your academic ability and understanding of the ethical implications of service in the United States Navy and Marine Corps. I applaud your commitment to excellence and appreciate your desire to prepare yourself morally and mentally to lead sailors and Marines. Congratulations and best wishes in all your future endeavors. And I've signed the citation. So Midshipman Second Class Gilchrist, if you would come on up for yours. Look right at the camera. Thank you. So the second finalist for the fall semester, Midshipman Nicole Hadler, is actually on a studying abroad program in Chile, which is organized by class of 1981 Tim Disher right there. So she's not here, but her paper was Ethics in the Military Service. So we'll make sure that she gets that upon her return. The next finalist from the fall of 2014. Was that last year? That was a long time ago. This is 2015, right? So this is Midshipman Second Class Ben Keegan, and his essay was Utilitarian Justification for Israel's Use of the Iron Dome. So Midshipman Keegan. Next finalist, Midshipman Second Class James Lieto, and the title of that paper is Ethical Reasoning and International Intervention, a Case Analysis of the Sudanese Civil War and the Justification of Humanitarian Intervention. James, come on up. I'm having to hold these further and further out. You're noticing that, right? Okay. Midshipman Second Class Sarah Tumbas, who wrote the paper Inextricably Linked. Marines can't read these kinds of titles. The Role of Just War Theory Behind Humanitarian Intervention Policy. Midshipman Tumbas. Inextricably. I'll look that up later this evening. So our fall semester winner is Midshipman now Second Class Hannah Meadows, who's not actually here. She's on an exchange at West Point. So again, she will receive all that goes with the winner, a plaque, a book that's about Admiral Lawrence, and also some spending money. So it's a nice award, and Hannah will get that, and we'll try not to spend it before she gets back here to the Naval Academy. So Hannah Meadows was the fall winner for 2014. Let's give Hannah a hand in absentia. Now for the spring, which would have been spring 2015, the finalist was Midshipman Second Class Brian Cully, and the title of his paper, "With Great Power Comes Great Responsibility." So the next finalist is Midshipman Second Class Jordan Figlioli, and the title of his paper is all in Latin. Now, I'm Greek. My original last name is Athanasiadis, and I could have handled Greek, but Latin, not so much. But you'll have to excuse me. He could actually give the proper pronunciation, I'm sure. Vi veri veneversum virus vici, which he can tell us what exactly that means when he comes up here. Midshipman Figlioli.
It means, by the power of truth, I, while living, have conquered the universe.
All right, here we go.
General Sattler and I helped him with that title, just so. Right, sir? The next finalist is Midshipman Second Class Thomas Gorman. The title of his paper, "When Technology Oversteps Its Boundaries." Midshipman Gorman. And now Midshipman Second Class Patrick Goff, and the title of his paper was "Non-Lethal Weapons in the Force." And our final finalist before the awardee is Midshipman Second Class Eric Sutton, and the title of his paper is "Just War Theory and Drone Warfare." So our winner for the spring semester of 2015 is Midshipman Second Class Allen Wang, and the title of his paper was "War Without Death: The Morality of Non-Lethal Weapons in the Military." We'll let you hold that. Hold the book. All right, gentlemen, I'll bring you back up in a moment, Admiral. So we have a new award that has been added to this dinner because it's a special dinner, and one of the things that it shows is the connection between the midshipmen and the staff, faculty, and coaches that are here at the Academy. So the Naval Academy class in 1958 wanted to honor their classmate Admiral Chuck Larson by establishing a unique ethical leadership award at the Academy, not for midshipmen, but for those who lead and influence those midshipmen. The Larson Ethical Leadership Excellence Award is named for Admiral Larson, who was an accomplished naval leader and had a distinguished 40-year naval career, to include command of all military forces in the Pacific, service in the White House, and appointment as the superintendent of the Naval Academy on 2 occasions. The award is presented to the Naval Academy staff, faculty, athletic administrator, or coach who has contributed significantly to the Academy's mission to graduate ethical leaders for the Navy, Marine Corps, and our nation by modeling through word and deed Admiral Larson's lifelong principles to uphold the standards, be a person of integrity, lead by example, strive for excellence without arrogance, and treat everyone with dignity and respect. A committee appointed by the superintendent reviewed all the nominations for the award and recommended a recipient to the superintendent. The recipient receives a citation and check from the class of 1958, and his or her name is engraved on a permanent plaque in the Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership, a plaque that hangs in the same area as the one that records the names of the essay award winners. To assist me as I present the inaugural Larson Award, I'd like to bring to the podium once again the superintendent, Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Gerson, United States Air Force retired, the president of the class of 1958, Captain Frank Gamboa, United States Navy retired, vice president of the class of 1958, and Mrs. Sally Larson. So the first recipient of the Admiral Charles R. Larson Ethical Leadership Excellence Award is Mr. Ken Niumatalolo, the Naval Academy's head football coach. So Coach Kenny, as he is affectionately called, first came to the Naval Academy as an assistant coach when Admiral Larson was the superintendent, and has not only established a superb record on the football field, he has prepared scores of football players to be Navy and Marine Corps officers and lead sailors and Marines in harm's way. He certainly represents Admiral Larson's 5 tenets of uphold the standards, be a person of integrity, lead by example, strive for excellence without arrogance, and treat everyone with dignity and respect. Coach Kenny, congratulations. That's for you, Coach.
Well, first of all, I'm grateful I wasn't in the essay contest because I wouldn't be up here. I'm listening to some of the topics, and I thought about my last college paper I wrote. I wrote a paper on mass media and college athletics, and my footnote stuff were all Sports Illustrated magazines. So. But Admiral, Sally, Diane, it's a great honor for me to be here. I came in 1995. I had no idea what to expect here. I didn't know how long I'd be here. And as beautiful as this place is, I mean, it's a gorgeous place. And, you know, I'm from the North Shore of Oahu, so I had no idea what the East Coast would be like. And I fell in love with how the beauty of this place. There's beautiful buildings, and there's so many great things about this place. I quickly learned that a lot of things that our players study here, I did not study at the University of Hawaii. You know, just watching some of the things and the homework that they had. But as General Beydler said, I mean, it's more than academics. And it's about the people. And from the students that go to school here, from the people that work here, this place is special. And I was very fortunate when I first came in 1995, our superintendent was Admiral Larson. And probably the most humble man that I've met. I remember our first evening that we went there, there was a function there at the home, and I was being nosy and looking at all the pictures on the walls, and I saw all his pictures with the president, and I was just looking at, you know, all of them talked to him, you know, best which, I can't remember what he said, but they all addressed him by first name. I said, wow, the superintendent, he knows all these presidents by the first name. And he was just such the most humble person. You know, I'd always see him even after he wasn't a superintendent, and he'd always introduce himself. You know, that's how humble he was. I mean, here's a 4-star introducing himself, and I said, Admiral Larson, I know exactly who you are. And just, but he was such a humble man, and just, so it's a great honor for me. And as I sat next to Sally and just listened to her sense of humor, just who she is, he was a great man, but obviously, you know, being guided by a great woman. And so, in what I do, I'm not in the military, but a coach's wife is very similar to being in the military. You hardly see your wife, and so I'm very grateful that I have a wonderful spouse that guides and directs me. And I've told people this, I'm very, very proud to be the head football coach at the United States Naval Academy. But that title doesn't define me. That's not who I am. It's just my job, and I love my job. But my title is that of being a father and a husband, and those are titles that will never leave me. And so I just take that with me. Just I'm very proud to be here. But I've told our guys just in who they are, just we have some very simple rules. Just choose the right. And just I know just the guys that I coach, the people that I work with, the people that I work for, they're great people here. And there have been so many wonderful people here, not to mention, first and foremost, Admiral Larson. I'm so grateful for his example and who he is. But I'll just close by saying that I'm grateful because I came here not knowing anything about leadership. But I've come to find out that leadership is really service. And the greatest leaders serve. And I learned from my dad, who was a cook in the Coast Guard for 23 years and became a manager of a restaurant. And I just remember going when he was the manager of this restaurant, I'd always go try to find my dad, and I could never find him. You know, he was never in his office, supposedly, you know, looking down and, you know, seeing what everybody else is doing. I'd go, hey, if you see my dad, he goes, yeah, he's cooking with the cooks. And it just left a profound influence on me, just my dad, just now that he was a cook for 23 years, but when he finally became a manager, he never forgot who he was and where he came from. And that just to continue to serve and to lead by example. And I'm so grateful for his example, for the example of, you know, Superintendent, you know, Chuck Larson, who's a wonderful man. And there's so many wonderful people in this room. I've been here so long, this is just like family. I see so many people that I know. So thank you very much for this great honor. But I'm grateful for our mids and, you know, for your essays, and what you did is way more important than what I'm doing. So thank everybody, and good night.
As we wrap up tonight, I do want to thank my key staff members who contributed immeasurably to tonight's event. Marge Bem, the center's senior staff associate, Jacqueline Dana, the center's education specialist, and Major Daniel Goff, the center's deputy director. We have other members of the staff, but those were the three that poured themselves into tonight, and I'd just like to give them a hand. As we depart tonight, I'd just like us to take a second to think about the people that we have recognized and honored tonight. Admiral Lawrence, Admiral Larson, and Admiral Stockdale. I realized as I was thinking about this last night that I was fortunate to be mentored by all three of those iconic leaders and role models. And I was extremely fortunate. And I was walking by another iconic leader and role model's office, and that's General John Sattler, who's the Distinguished Chair in Leadership. And he has a poster that's up on his door. And I think it really wraps together when I think about those three officers, Admiral Lawrence, Admiral Larson, and Admiral Stockdale. And what's on his door is a quote from the book Gates of Fire. Gates of Fire is a historic novel about the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC, when a small contingent of Spartans, backed by some other Greek soldiers, but it was primarily those 300 in the gap, they were trying to hold off the masses of the Persian Empire coming against them. And in the book, the Persian king, King Xerxes, who has basically had to force this army to march, looks down at King Leonidas, who's the Spartan commander, the Spartan king, and he just can't understand why there would be such dedication in that gap. And there happens to be a Greek prisoner that he turns to ask the question why they would do that. And I believe that the answer that the slave gives is the answer that is why we remember Admiral Lawrence, Admiral Larson, and Admiral Stockdale as we do so fondly, and have been influenced by them because they led like this slave said King Leonidas led. And these were his words to King Xerxes, the Greek slave. I will tell his majesty what a king is. A king does not abide in his tent while his men bleed and die upon the field. A king does not dine while his men are hungry, nor sleep while they stand watch on the wall. A king does not command his men's loyalty through fear or purchase it with gold. He earns their love, by the sweat of his own back, by the pain he endures for their sake. The harshest burden a king lifts first and sets down last. A king does not require service of those he leads, but provides it to them. He serves them, not they him. King, your majesty, that's what a real king is. That's the example that I believe Admiral Lawrence, Admiral Larson, Admiral Stockdale showed to us over their years. And to me, that's the kind of leadership we need to show as we go out day by day. That we serve them. They don't serve us. So God bless you. Thank you for being with us, and have a safe return home. God bless you.